Ukrainian D-Day is almost here, and Ukrainian counteroffensive will only have one chance, and it needs to be rapid, fast, shocking, and brutal. Russians know this as well, and they are afraid. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's go straight to the point and see some most recent footage. And today we have this ridiculously promotional video of the Ministry of Defense of Russia recruiting people to the army under the contract. And the basic idea is that you are a man, you need to go to the army. It basically shows people like securities in the supermarket, gym trainers and taxi drivers, which kinda allows you to assume that Ministry of Defense of Russia is like, come on, no, at least someone, no, join the army already, we need you, do it now. This full promotional video will be on my Patreon, and now let's continue to some more news which are still infused with the Russian propaganda. And so yes, as soon as Putin recently signed this document about the electronic notifications for military summons, a lot of government organizations, including hospitals, were now obliged to collect the updated personal data from its people. And so right here, for example, we have one of such documents from one of the local hospitals where the guy just came for his routine medical checkup. And no, not for the military, but the hospital administration, they said that we will not take you until you fill up this form. And it does have your first name, last name, birth date, the address, and everything else that Ministry of Defense of Russia might use against you. And speaking about the Ministry of Defense, right here is the Minister of Defense of Russia, Sergei Shoigu, inspecting the missile launch complex located somewhere in Kaluga region. And for some reason, I cannot stop thinking about that probably the conversations were something like this. Shoigu were like, oh, that's pretty cool spaceships you have right here. But the Ministry of Defense, these are not the spaceships, these are missiles. Okay, nerd, look at you, what, you know everything. Okay, let it be missiles then, I guess. Right, and also, do you remember that couple of days ago, Putin allegedly visited Kherson region just to check how's the situation? And long story short, according to the Western analytics, including the ones from the Institute for the Study of War, the purpose of this trip might have been very, very different. And what they basically claim is that Putin was allegedly looking for scapegoats, just in case if Ukrainian counteroffensive, which will begin soon, will breach the defenses of Russians in the south, Putin will already know the names of the ones to blame. And yes, don't worry, we will talk about the upcoming Ukrainian counteroffensive in more details very soon. And speaking about the visits of the highest officials to Ukraine, you also remember that Zelensky also went to Avdiivka. And apparently, according to the locals who were able to familiarize themselves with the surroundings of the president, it basically turned out that he was only less than 4 kilometers away from the front lines. And I mean, just compare it to Putin's visit, which was obviously pre-recorded and was more than 150 kilometers away from any possible location where Ukrainians can attack him. President Zelensky recently made another visit to Volyn region, which is located very close to the borders with Poland and Belarus. And as always, he just gave some motivational speeches to the people right there and awarded some medals. And so yes, it almost feels like that Zelensky was out in this last couple of weeks, way more than Putin was out of his bunker in the entire year, as long as this is the real, obviously, Putin. And if you also think that Putin uses doppelgangers, can you please like this video and subscribe to my channel to see how many of us believe in this idea. You can also follow my second channel, The Russian Dude Clips, where I post under 1-minute summaries every single day. The link will be down below. Alright, just literally a couple of words about the Western military support to Ukraine and the new markings that Ukrainian soldiers are using on their military vehicles. And then we'll talk about the updated situation in the south and the east of Ukraine. And first of all, Ukraine recently received the second air defense system, IRST, along with 16 missiles for it out of 4 promised. Next we have another military support package of the US to Ukraine worth of $300 $125 million, and this one will include additional HIMARS missiles, ammunition, and other important military equipment. And speaking about the new markings that Ukrainians are using on their military vehicles, as you can see from these pictures, these are basically some kind of arrows with numbers, potentially pointing out in the direction of the upcoming counteroffensive, though at this very moment this is just a wild assumption. Alright, and now as promised, let's talk about the situation in the east and the south of Ukraine, and we begin with the south, where recently a couple of Russian Guerrilla drones attacked Odessa. The target of this attack was a recreational civilian infrastructure, which, to be honest, to me personally, it looks like just a park for kids. And according to Ukrainian air defense forces, out of 12 drones that the Russians launched against Ukraine recently, 10 of them have been intercepted. And speaking about the drones, right here I have a video of a Ukrainian drone destroying probably a radar equipment that Russians installed on this high infrastructure. And recently, such FPV drones attacks intensified, which potentially is just one of the signs about the upcoming Ukrainian counteroffensive. And just for you, I was able to find almost 10 of such videos, and I uploaded all of them uncensored versions to my Patreon. The link is down below, and there's still 1 week of free access. And as you go back to the south, according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians continued installing fortifications and defense structures along southern front lines, and recently they started to accelerate in doing so. Alright, and now let's go to the east of Ukraine, but first of all, let's make a quick stop in Bryansk region, located in Russia, where recently, allegedly a Ukrainian drone attacked a local military enlistment office. And as we go back to Ukraine, according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians conducted several attacks, obviously unsuccessful, next to Kupiansk front line, and then they were also attacking along Svatovo-Kreminna highway, with not much results as well. And then, if we take a look at this map, which shows us the changes in territorial control, we can see that Russians advanced several dozen meters in the forests to the south of Kreminna. And as we go a little bit to the south, to the city of Nahirne, according to the Ukrainians, they were able to destroy a Russian firing position along with 2 ammunition trucks. Next we go to the hottest point in the entire Ukraine, the city of Bakhmut, where according to the leader of Wagner, Yevgeny Prigozhin, his soldiers started breaching the Ukrainian defenses in the west of this city. And according to the Russian infiltrators in Donetsk region, Russians are now controlling 90% of this city. As you can see from this map, it is not even close. I mean, we can even take a look at this map to see how much progress Russians were able to do in the last 24 hours, and as you can see, they just advanced a little bit closer to this road next to Khromovy. And yes, at a cost of hundreds of lives. But on the other hand, according to the Ukrainian side, and specifically the general of the Ukrainian army, Mykola Malamush, Ukrainians were able to destroy at least 70 to 80% of Russian elite forces, mostly in Bakhmut and its surrounding areas. And the reason for this, I mean, you already know it, because Russians were just simply sending waves after waves of Russian soldiers to capture positions in Bakhmut, and as soon as conventional soldiers were pretty much depleted, they started assigning the very same tasks to the elite people who were trained for much different things. And well, as of recently, if you remember from my previous episodes, even these elite forces are depleting faster than anticipated. That is why Russians are now simply combining regular conscripts and elite soldiers, with probably some of them dozens of years of experience. And as a result, there is obviously a huge miscommunication between these two completely different groups of people, which leads to even more severe losses. And speaking about this ridiculous Russian military tactic, right here I have a video of Ukrainians defending their positions in the western side of Bakhmut from the trenches. They basically defeat this last remaining major road which connects Bakhmut and Ivanovsky, and you can literally see that Russians are simply running towards them in the open field, and they become a pretty easy target for Ukrainians. Unfortunately, I'm not able to show the entire video due to YouTube community guidelines. That is why I uploaded the entire 3 minutes uncensored version to my Patreon. The link is down below. And so yes, if you remember from my previous episode, Ukrainians slowly but surely, but they are counter-attacking in particular areas, and they even take some of their small territories back. And this statement has also been confirmed recently by Anna Malyar, who is saying that yes, indeed, Ukrainians are performing such small combat activities specifically in the east of Ukraine, and then also by the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, Alexei Danilov, who is saying, do not expect that the counteroffensive of Ukraine will happen at a specific date. No, the counteroffensive is already happening, slowly but surely, and in the future it will only accelerate. And just to give you an example, in the last 24 hours alone, Ukrainians were able to destroy 4 Russian tanks, 12 armored personnel carriers, and 9 artillery systems. All of this happened in the east of Ukraine. And even President Zelensky himself announced recently that he is creating 19 local military administrations in the cities which are still under Russian temporary occupation. And as you can see right here from this map, the majority of them are located in the south, specifically in the Zaporozhye region. As for now, we obviously do not know the direct responsibilities of these military administrations, but most likely they will be assisting the Ukrainian forces during the counteroffensive and fighting Russians from the inside behind the front lines. We then even have videos like this which shows just how many Ukrainian soldiers are assembling in specific places, and guess what? Yes, they are preparing for the counteroffensive. And even the advisor to Valery Zaluzhny, Dan Rice, he is saying that Ukraine is preparing the counteroffensive which will shock the world. And well, what do you think about Russians? Surely they know that this offensive is coming, and Russian propagandists switched their narrative from being hostile and full of hatred to Ukrainians are coming, so what do? They will be fast, brutal, they will destroy us. Hopefully our soldiers will be able to repel them, otherwise we are done. But nevertheless, even though the counteroffensive is set to happen, it will be extremely complicated. And what is even more important, that the very first 24 hours of it will be absolutely crucial. Some Western analytics and military experts are even calling this the Ukrainian D-Day because of its huge importance, and whoever captures the initiative within the first day will be most likely dominant throughout this entire event. And at this very moment, many people are trying to estimate the quantity of the Ukrainian forces preparing for this attack and specifically where they will attack in the first place. But to be honest, it does not matter how well prepared or well trained they are. Unfortunately, it will still be extremely complicated. And here is why. The very last massively successful counteroffensive of Ukraine happened in Kherson region back in November of the last year, and since then Russians were methodically preparing for any potential Ukrainian attacks in the future, erecting fortifications, defense structures, and planting mines near the front lines. And so most likely Ukrainians will not be just able to just march as they previously did straight forward and attack Russians from the front or from the flanks. This time they need to make this counteroffensive extremely quick, rapid, fast, unexpected, shocking and brutal. And what it basically means is that they need to attack specifically in one place with as much force as they have, with the help of partisans and those people behind the Russian front lines, attacking Russians in the back to cause the panic amongst the Russian forces, confusion, and pretty much make them run. Ukrainians need to attack extremely important military objects, such as, for example, military headquarters. They need to attack the concentration of Russian forces and destroy their military vehicles and equipment as fast as possible. And if there is this confusion and panic among Russian forces, all the defenses that they were previously creating will become irrelevant. In addition to that, if Ukrainians will be able to make the Russian forces desert and abandon their positions and start running backwards, those Russians who will be waiting them behind, or maybe even the reserves, they'll be ordered to take their places in the front lines. But because so many people will be running the opposite direction, it will confuse and scare those new arriving soldiers as well. Just for comparison reasons, in one of these massively successful Ukrainian counteroffensive in the past, they were able to liberate approximately 6,000 square kilometers in only 10 days. But they were attacking pretty much along the entire front line. But this time, like mentioned previously, most likely they will need to pinpoint their attack, specifically somewhere where there is a concentration of Russian forces and at the same time very important logistical hub, so that they can penetrate the defenses and then expand this attack and then surround Russian forces. And well, what about the Ukrainian side then? Well, the Ukrainian military leadership needs to show the exquisite morale and fighting will, because their soldiers will be looking at them as an example, and then they will need to stay strong in case Russians will be showing a significant resistance and not to panic themselves. It will be extremely important 24 hours for Ukrainians indeed. And most likely this will be the most important day in the modern history of Ukraine and in this war. And according to some other Western politicians, such as for example the president of Czech Republic Petr Pavel, he said that Ukraine will only have one chance at a successful counteroffensive, and they must do it right here and right now. Because according to him, many other Western countries have been already helping Ukraine so much, supplying them military support and sending them military equipment and vehicles. Everyone at this point expects that Ukrainian counteroffensive will be successful, and in case it is not, it will be that much harder to continue receiving the assistance, because most likely Western politicians will start forcing the Ukrainian leadership to find some sort of middle ground and start negotiating with Russians. Petr Pavel does not discourage Ukrainians from attacking, he's just saying that the perfect window of opportunity is right here, and Ukrainians need to take advantage of this and be very careful at executing their plan. And at the same time, next year in 2024 there will be a presidential elections in America, the biggest supporter of Ukraine, which most likely means that they will switch towards their own internal problems, and the war fatigue against Ukrainians will only increase. This whole idea is confirmed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba, who is saying that it will be extremely dangerous to consider the upcoming Ukrainian counteroffensive as the turning point in this war, because in case Ukrainians are not successful, most likely, just like Petr Pavel mentioned, the Western leaders will start pushing Ukrainian authorities. But some other Ukrainian officials, such as Kirill Budanov, they're more confident in the success of their attack, and he's saying that sooner rather than later the rest of the world will see the results of a Ukrainian counteroffensive. If you also want to personally see the results of this truly monumental event in the modern history of the world, because I will be here 100% to report on this, just please consider subscribing to my channel. It only takes one click. The best way to support my work is through my Patreon, where still 1 week of free access. You can also unlock exclusive channel badges by becoming my channel member, or just use a PayPal link. Everything can be found to the right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you tomorrow.